Hello, Minister Regan. Thank you so much for joining us today on this ASP Chat.
Hey, thank you all for having me. I'm excited about this conversation.
Well, just to brief everybody, Mr. Regan, you are the 16th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. You previously served as the Secretary of North Carolina's Department of Environmental Quality. And currently, you are the key member of the U.S. delegation at the COP26 conference. So let's start there. Simply, can you just break down what is the COP26 conference and what are specifically some of the U.S.'s priorities at that conference?
Well, you know, the Convention of Parties, commonly referred to as COP, it's a decision-making body for the United Nations framework on climate change. This is the 26th meeting of this body, and it's an important one because the time for action is now. This is the moment. I think we're all feeling that sense of urgency, and we have to successfully tackle climate change and the global crisis. So the president's goal really is to demonstrate to the rest of the world that not only is the United States back, but we're back with the plan and we're ready to lead again.
Well said. What are the biggest concerns for the U.S. when it comes to climate change?
You know, listen, from wildfires out west to hurricanes on the East Coast, the massive flooding in the middle of the country, Americans are experiencing serious climate change impacts right now. And in addition to these natural disasters, we're seeing significant impacts on public health and the national economy. So clearly, you don't have to be a scientist to see and feel the effects of climate change. All you have to do is look outside your window. We're already losing lives and we're experiencing the pain from these impacts. And then we're seeing the disproportionate impacts to Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and low-income communities. So this is an all-hands-on-deck moment, and that's why the president has adopted this whole-of-government approach that's rooted in science to confront the climate crisis.
So one of the goals I think you mentioned was getting global collaboration to fight climate change, right? So how much influence does the U.S. really have in getting other countries to take actually decisive climate action?
Listen, we have a lot of influence because we have a lot of credibility. We're a credible nation. We've always been a global leader, and we will continue to do so. I mean, not only are we back, we're leading with concrete examples. While in Glasgow, the United States will be announcing new initiatives that cover multiple sectors, from agriculture to oil and gas to deforestation. The president has already implemented a whole-of-government approach domestically, and he's released a U.S. long-term strategy that spells out the path that the United States must take to reach, net zero greenhouse gas emissions no later than 2050. And at EPA, I'm proud to say, we've proposed rules to limit hydrofluorocarbon pollution from air conditioning and refrigeration, which are even more potent than CO2 from coal plants. So we've got rules to reduce pollution from transportation, and we're beginning to usher in the legacy of the electric cars and trucks. And just this week, we proposed the most ambitious and aggressive rule to cut methane pollution from the oil and gas sector. So this is an opportunity, and we're seizing the moment.
Another goal of the conference is to finalize the rule book for the Paris Climate Accords. And for those who don't know, the Paris Climate Accords is a global agreement the Biden administration rejoined earlier this year. What was the Paris Climate Conference, and what commitments did the U.S. agree to?
Well, you know, that was COP21 and the Paris Climate Conference, which was held in 2015. That was a breakthrough moment. It was the first time all 200 countries agreed to keep global warming below 2 degrees. Since then, you know, we've lost some serious momentum, and we've got to step it up. So the time is now. We have that sense of urgency, and this is a make or break moment.
Countries attending the COP26 conference are being asked to reduce emissions to reach net zero by the middle of this century. As one of the top 3 emitters in the world, is it actually possible for the U.S. to reach that goal? And you spoke a little bit about this earlier, but what actions or policies are going to be needed to be enacted to make that happen?
Listen, it is possible, and EPA is demonstrating that we can lead the way. I mentioned the regulation on HFCs, on cars and trucks, on oil and gas and power plants. By the way, these rules that we're proposing, they are inviting more technological solution than ever before in our nation's history. All of these proposals embody bold and aggressive actions to tackle climate pollution and protect overburdened communities. So this is about real people protecting their health, but we're just one agency. And with the president's whole of government approach, you can multiply these kinds of efforts all across government and see that it is possible.
China has surpassed the U.S. as the world's biggest producer of fossil fuel carbon emissions. How important are U.S. emission reductions compared to the reductions of developing economies like China and India? And are those countries willing to take action?
Hey, very important. Listen, this is very important, and it's important that we step up and take action. It's also an opportunity for the United States to lead the world in a technological revolution and create new business models that we can use both at home and abroad, creating millions of jobs. So this is about winning the future as well and being globally competitive while we save the planet. And by the way, this isn't a challenge for future generations. Like we have to respond and act now. We have to respond with a sense of urgency while taking full advantage of the opportunity to build and grow. And I believe, and the president believes, that if we do this right, developing economies will follow our playbook.
You recently released a draft strategic plan that added environmental justice as a fourth pillar to climate change policy. Can you just tell us what exactly is environmental justice and how does it relate to climate change?
I'm so glad you asked that question. You know, environmental justice is the recognition that all people in this country, regardless of the color of their skin, how much money they have in their pockets, or the community that they live in, they deserve equal protections of our environmental laws and policies. The reality is that not all people have benefited equally from environmental protection. So for decades, our Black communities, our Latinx, Indigenous, and low income, they've borne the highest burden of pollution. And at the same time, our communities tend to suffer the most with rising sea levels and raging wildfires and storms and floods. So just one example briefly is if we see an increase of 1.5 degrees, Black Americans are 34% more likely to live in communities that will see an alarming increase in childhood asthma, 40% more likely to live in communities where they'll see an alarming increase in heat-related deaths. Latinos are 40% more likely to live in areas where they'll see drastic labor shortages because of heat impacts to agriculture and construction jobs. So, you know, this is on top of decades of overexposure to pollution. Climate change just compounds the problems that have existed for a long period of time, and it's time to do something about it. And EPA is doing something about it.
Great answer. That ripple effect is really something to look at. Wow. So Democrats in Congress have been working on a social spending plan that includes billions of dollars to fight climate change. How specifically does the bill address climate change? And are there other actions your agency intends to take at the executive level?
Absolutely. To be exact, $550 billion focused specifically on tackling climate change. And a lot of that is to complement our regulation. This is a moment in time where we need to see a public-private investment in this country and in the world. So the federal government, the $550 billion, will be co-invested with the private sector. This helps get that private sector capital off the sidelines, get some of the technologies we need, push faster, stronger, and harder. And it's aimed squarely at mitigating the impacts of climate change, which means ushering in lots of new clean energy. By the way, that's new technology, new jobs, and protecting more people. In addition to that, there are billions of dollars as well invested in our infrastructure. I'll give you a good example, $55 billion for water infrastructure to help get good quality drinking water to every single person in this country. Right now, there are 10 million lead service lines in this country. And we all know what lead exposure means to our children. So in addition to having climate mitigation in this package, we've also got some health investments in this package, along with infrastructure to help with that triple bottom line. We've got to protect our people, our planet, and we've got to protect the profits of this country. And I think that these investments do that.
You just spoke to something that a lot of people talk about on ASP, which is the balance between the public-private partnership and the balance and the concern that a lot of Americans have that the new climate change regulations and climate change initiatives will hurt people's jobs and their economy. And you're mentioning a bill in which we're going to spend a lot of money to try to combat that. Where does that money in the public-private partnership help address and can quell the fears that people have that it's going to hurt their finances personally?
You know, a good example is the methane rule we just proposed this week. We've talked with industry and we've looked at the types of technologies that we need to control methane. By the way, the methane that's seeping out of these oil and gas fields, that's lost product. They should want to retain that product so they can sell it as opposed to having it be emitted into the air and damage our climate and public health. We're talking about using satellite technology, drones, advanced technologies to help these companies save more of their product so that they can push that product through the system and not have it as pollution. There are lots of jobs associated with analyzing the data, looking at the types of satellite technology or drone technology. So we're trying to set the rules of engagement so we see an evolution to our industries that create new business models and new jobs and allow for this country to be more globally competitive. If we think that the old way is the right way and we're just afraid of change, then this country won't be globally competitive. If we want to reduce climate pollution, create jobs, and grab onto new markets and new technologies, I believe that regulations just set the framework that allow for innovation to take this country as far as it should go. And so there is a balance between regulation, innovation, and the private sector. But there's also the need for a congruent investment in our federal tax dollars and how the private sector is investing their capital. If we do that correctly, this country will win. And by the way, it will answer the questions about India and China. If we win this technological revolution and create jobs and spur new business models, countries like China and India will follow, just like they have in the past.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It's
so
a very
much.
important topic. Hope you enjoyed the conference, and thank you so much for your time for this ASP Chat.
Hey, thank you all for what you do in elevating all of our voices. This is awesome, and this country needs more of it.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.